everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the YouTube series where I reveal what's inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Welcome to Reveal 13, and this mold is a Jody mold that says 1970 and 1977, and inside it appears to be two little bird figurines, and they kind of look a little bit different, like they're two different birds. So I cleaned this one out and I'm looking forward to pouring this one just to see how the structural integrity is of these pieces, like how delicate they're going to be, as well as what they're actually for. Like I feel like they're just going to be little sort of bird things that you can even add to your plants. So this one didn't really need much tipping out, so I just left it on the sieve so that any excess would drip out. And opening it up, the detail on the wings, the eyes, the texture of where the feathers and the way the feathers sit on these birds is so detailed. I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of that detail as I paint them, because I just feel like once I glaze them, because I do like using my clear glaze, that it will cover a lot of that texture. I would like to leave them matte, but I'm just worried that if I do that, they'll scratch and the design may come off if I put a lot of detail on it. So I start by smoothing off the molds, because that's what I always do, and it's just to make sure that it's got a nice even surface. And I kind of think that these remind me of like a folk art or like a traditional art bird that's like full of pattern, and it's usually like that Scandinavian style bird. It kind of reminds me of something that I would see in IKEA in the plant section to add to your like cool monstera or something. So I decided to go in with those really prominent primary colors, and I'm going to detail each one of them with some really gorgeous pattern works. So yeah, when I do that, I've decided to do like the darker color on the belly and then a lighter color on the top. So it's kind of like contrasting but still complements each other. But I'm just like curious whether I should have done like the darker side on top. I'm not sure. I will see how it goes as I do it. So I go in with some of those really gorgeous detail patterns. So usually there's like a lot of like floral, leaf details. So I'm using my finest brush to go in and add those details. And this process was actually really therapeutic, and it's pretty much most of the video. It's just adding those colors, different flora, foliage, to sort of fill in like a pattern work detail to really bring these birds to life. So I started by doing one completely just to test the idea out, because I didn't want to go doing like half a job on each one and then going, I don't like this idea anymore. So I did the yellow one first and I really liked it. So, okay, my bird has just decided that he wants to join the voiceover. But he must really like the birds. So, yeah. Anyway, the idea was to do one completely so that I didn't put all my time and effort into these really detailed illustrations just for them to look not that great. So yeah, the first one was kind of like a test up, but it ended up being my favorite one in the end. So I go in and each one I do it in a stage. So I add like the flower on the back, then I add the details, and I outline the flower. I don't usually outline my flowers, but I felt that that made it sort of more of that block sort of printy style patterning that I see in that sort of Scandinavian-esque folk art. And then I add the foliage and I sort of just drape it through around the flowers, and it's sort of just like making a sort of randomized pattern. That's kind of like a contradiction, a random pattern. But it's kind of meant to have like a repetitive nature, but it's very random in the placement. So yeah, just enjoy my painting for a little while, because this was the main part of this mold, is that there wasn't much I had to really do to make it really special in terms of sculpting. But I really just wanted to bring it to life with lots and lots of color. I knew that My bird just wants to be in this voiceover, I think. Like never before has he been so loud, but maybe he just needs a segment. Maybe it's because it's the bird one. I don't know. Maybe he's just like, yeah, my fam is in this video. But yeah, it was about adding all of this color and trying to really bring it to life, because I feel like with this mold, often it would just be really accurate, like a really accurate to what it would naturally appear in the wild. So lots of browns and grays and yellows, sort of what you would see in nature with the birds. So very lifelike is the word I'm trying to describe, a lifelike bird. So I wanted to add my color, and color is like my signature. So I love using it, and I love using it in unique, strange ways sometimes when I can, and to really bring things to life and sort of, I guess, a real kitsch style. So yeah, just adding those details now. So finishing the beak and really finishing it off. So I've done the eyes as black because I wanted them to sort of pop against the color. I was a little bit nervous adding the black after I've used just so much color, but it ended up popping really nicely. So I packed them in for a bisque firing, and I haven't shown how to set my kiln for a bisque firing before. So here's a little quick run through. I just keep clicking the button start until I get to cone, and then I switch it to an 06 cone and a slow speed, and then I review it and it should come up as cone 06, 998 degrees. So nice and slow, and this will just dry the pieces out completely. And I like to do this after painting so that it will bake the underglaze on, so that when you dip it into the glaze or put glaze on anything, it doesn't smudge. So I'm adding that glaze now, and they're actually quite easy to dunk, and then I set them in their little spots overnight, and they actually sit quite well in the kiln. So the next morning, which is this morning, I popped open the kiln to have a little peek, and look, this is a reenactment of what my face did. Inaudible swearing. If you can see down the bottom there, two of the birds have freaking fallen over. So I'm waiting for it to cool down enough to assess the damage. And I'm so nervous about the birds that are in the back of the kiln to see whether they've all fallen over. But the ones at the front haven't. And I didn't think that they would at all. And they look like they have glued together. So when the glaze is melted, it is like a glue, like a mesh. So when they fall into each other at a critical point, they can literally glue together, and that's why you need to make sure you pack your kiln with lots of space in between each piece. So pulling out the shelf, those ones at the back I was really nervous for, but it looked like they'd just fallen over. Maybe when I opened the door and it sort of gave it a little bit of a wriggle and they've fallen over, but these ones have all glued together, and I am shocked because I didn't expect that at all. So when I pulled them out, one of the koalas just happened to like sort of pull off. It was almost like it was sort of resting on it, but the other three were joined together. So whilst they're still warm, I wanted to try and pull them apart so that if they were savable, the warmth is sort of makes them more malleable and less brittle. So they sort of just popped off, the koala, which was fine, and the koala actually looks completely fine. It doesn't have any sort of blemish on it, but the two birds are just fused together. Like, okay, rightio. The two birds are fused together, and they're not coming apart, but they kind of look like a yin and yang, or like a two like koi fish, but the bird version, like a totally unintentional mistake, but that's how they look. And where they fell over, where I'm pointing, that's where the kiln shelf, it's attached to the kiln shelf. So luckily I had a lot of kiln wash on the kiln shelves at the time. I'd just done a new kiln wash at that bisque. So kiln wash just prevents things from sticking, and it means that it will pull off if there's glaze drips. So here is the reveal of the good pieces. So let's focus on the good. I'm actually not too disappointed about what happened, even though they took me a really long time. I'm still so happy with this color, the way they pop, the way the colors have come out. Like, they are so gorgeous, and looking at them all together, they make me feel really proud that I spent the time on them. Like, at the time I was regretting how long it took, and it took me a few days coming back and forth to them throughout other jobs. But I'm so proud that I persevered, because some of these tones are just gorgeous. I think that I love the yellow one the best. But I don't know, they've all got their own little quirks. Like, the light blue on this blue one's really gorgeous too. But yeah, here's a little hack. I just put a little bit of clay to sit this one up nice and tall for the little photo shot at the end. But what do you think? I'm really impressed with the color. I'm really impressed with the patterning, and I definitely think they paid off. And as a group, they're so gorgeous. I think I'll add them to some plants pots or something. I don't know. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe for part 14.